The unemployment problem is growing, not receding. This needs more attention. People are not going to be able to recover because they received one or two $1,200 stimulus checks. Business won't be able to survive because they could postpone paying rent for a few months. This isn't a fairy tale, and it doesn't always end with happily ever after. Think about the massive group of people who still today never recovered from the financial crisis. Wake up. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I have a very important video and we're going to look at the struggle to survive. This is very interesting because you can see this at all different levels. I'm going to show you the big and the small. I'll explain that more in just a second. We are going to look at, of course, what the ECB is doing, what the Federal Reserve is doing. I need to focus on the central banks. I need to touch on those as well here. I've got a lot to cover. Let's begin. Imagine how many small businesses are unable to pay their bills right now. Imagine how many individuals have been postponing their rent. Well, we can take this all the way up. Gap, you've probably heard of them. Well, apparently they've had some trouble paying. The biggest mall owner in the country, Simon Property Group, is suing one of its biggest tenants, Gap, saying it failed to pay more than $65.9 million in rent and other charges. This is huge. Apparently they say that they're gonna pay, don't worry about it, but because they necessarily don't have to, that they are not going to until a later date. This is gonna go back and forth, and I am sure they're not the only ones who are going to be fighting with their landlords. We'll see what happens with this. I just wanted to bring it up because it's not just small businesses that are being affected, it's big businesses too, and this is one very good example. JCPenney announces 154 stores set to close this summer. It's just one of so many different retailers that have had to close up shop. This is a big issue here because it affects so many jobs. We are seeing what's happening with the job situation. I've been covering this extensively. Again, this is just one retailer. There are so many that I like to get into. I like to show you, and this has been progressing. The year 2019 was a record year for store closures. 2020 is likely to be much worse. I'm just interested to see how many can actually survive this. It will be difficult. AMC has, quote, substantial doubt that it can survive this shutdown. That shows you that, they're the biggest of all, and we could see that even they cannot survive. If you look at this really as it breaks down, it just shows you that so many different sectors, so many different industries have been hit by what's happening here, and it doesn't seem to be turning around anytime soon. We have seen it being a positive light shined onto, for example, Netflix, because people haven't been going to the movie theater. They've been staying home and watching those movies and TV shows and things. So you can look at this two different ways, but I just need to show you this specifically because it affects jobs. That's what we're talking about here. Jobless claims, total unemployment level worse than expected. Of course, there's always going to be news that comes out telling you that there's going to be a V-shaped recovery. I'm still reading about that today, by the way, which is ridiculous at this point. Anyway, regardless, weekly jobless claims totaled 1.8 million last week versus the Dow Jones estimate of 1.7 million. Continuing claims rose sharply, hitting nearly 21.5 million, in a sign that workers are being called back to work slowly. This is important, of course, because I've been showing you as it has progressed, and I've got some charts to go along with that. Initial claims since early March top 42 million. You have to think about how many people right now do not have income and what this means for the economy over the long term. If they were struggling, let's say for 3 months, they didn't get any income, maybe they're okay in the end, but what does that mean for their disposable income? What are they going to do with all of that? They're going to be now trying to hopefully get things sorted. Maybe it's paying down their credit card debt that they took on during this period. They're not going to be able to go to the movies even if they necessarily were able to afford it. Their restaurants are going to be reduced. Things like this that they don't really need to do right now. But of course, we're seeing so much of this being a problem, and this will extend. for a period. This just shows you, of course, I've been giving you the information over the past little while. Total over the past 11 weeks, 42.6 million. It is extreme when you see that just going up to a record high in such a short period of time. Continuing claims up from the prior week, weekly continued claims for unemployment insurance. You could see that on the right-hand side there where it has moved. And it is really surprising to some, but it shouldn't be because this is all very clear. I made a post about this on my community or blog section of the channel, and it's really, really unfortunate to see something like this. But regardless, 1 in 4 Americans are skipping meals or relying on food donations. This tells you how serious it has become. It's not just about not getting that pay raise or maybe their salary was cut a bit. We're talking about people that need food to survive. Really, really unbelievable. There's a chart following this, and I'll show you that. As always, when we look at these surveys, these are just sample sizes. We're not going to get the entire country to be able to, all that data through. It just doesn't work like that, but it gives us some good insight. I have shown you many of these surveys. I've shown you the articles written, the pictures that were taken about all of the food banks that were receiving so much of a surge, and it was unprecedented. And this just gives us a little bit of a snapshot of what's going on. 1/4 say they have skipped meals, visited a food bank, or have applied for or received SNAP benefits, that's food stamps, since February. And it's just really, really unbelievable. They've been getting the stimulus check to $1,200, but what's that really going to do for somebody if they live in the average city, the average household? It's not going to be enough, and they could give more, and it looks like they probably will. But that doesn't solve the problem. People need to work. If they can work, they can provide themselves that income, which pays their bills, and hopefully everything goes on from there. But that's really not happening now for so many reasons. This article here is talking about specifically with New York and the financial jobs. NYC metro area finance jobs face multi-year recovery again. This just gives you an idea of what's happening here. And it doesn't look like they're going to be able to recover anytime soon. I mean, the chart here is 2026, and it doesn't look like it'll get back to that level that it was at prior to 2020. So there's no way for it to actually return to its quote-unquote normal when we have all of these different problems that have been piling up. They're not even talking about what's happening between China and the US. That's not even a discussion yet. That hasn't come up on the radars of these traders at all. Just imagine when they have to start dangling the carrot of the next trade deal in front of them for another 2 years. What a joke. And that leads me into what's happening with the markets. I thought this was interesting. It comes out of the Financial Times. Take a look at this quote. If you look back in 2 to 3 years and this market turns around and drops 50%, the history books will say, quote, that looked like one of the great warnings of all time. It was pretty obvious it was destined to end badly. If it does end badly for the history book, they're going to be very unkind to the bulls. I think it's just interesting. We don't know what's going to happen here, of course, with all the Fed liquidity, the ECB, the BOJ, the PBOC, the BOE, and every other central bank around the world printing more money than we've ever seen in history. Nobody knows what's going to happen. We don't know if this will completely destroy the currency in a short period of time or it will erode the value over a longer period. We don't know which assets will see the benefit of it in the medium term and long term, but we can definitely see that the market likes it right now. That's for sure. GMO bulked up on stocks during the sell-off, but has since cut positions in the US market, worried that the big jump in prices has created a historically large mismatch with the dire economic backdrop. And that's what we've been talking about here. As you can see, the economy is going one way, the stock market's going another. This is what happens when you manipulate the markets in the way that they do. And there's a lot of question marks here that is just generally creating a whole bunch of unknowns, both for the businesses, for those investors, and everyone in between. I can't even believe I'm reading this here, but another program has been expanded. This time, well, let me just read it for you. On June 3rd, they announced this. Federal Reserve Board announces the expansion in the number and the type of entities eligible to directly use its municipal liquidity facility. I think I had talked about this, what was it, yesterday or the day before. Bill Dudley from the Federal Reserve was saying that it's impossible, or it's very difficult anyway, for the Federal Reserve to be handing out money to businesses. They are not really able to do so. This is not what the Federal Reserve is supposed to be doing, but yet they want them to do this. The whole world is asking them to do this. This is not their intended purpose. They're supposed to, whatever, they shouldn't even exist anyway. That's my whole view on that. But the way I look at this here is very clear. They're expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding. At what point are they going to be able to revert that? That's the question. If they do what they did leading up to 2018, and we saw what happened with 2018, how are they going to do it this time if the bubble is even bigger? It will be so devastating. We'll never see anything even close to it up until this point. It's going to be crazy. Directly from the ECB's website on the 4th of June, you could see that they've expanded yet another one of their programs. This time it's the PEPP, and they increased it from 600 billion now to 1.35 trillion. 1.35 trillion just for the one program. Remember, they've got every letter of the alphabet being used right now twice over. We're looking at the corporate sector, the CSPP, they got the ASP, I think that's what it's called, the asset purchase program. They've everything you can put a letter there, they've got it. And this just shows you how devalued all of these currencies are going to become, and really already have, versus real goods. This is truly unfortunate because the average person has no idea what's happening. Look, all of this stuff is convoluted. It's all messed up. You can look at the CSPP, you can look at the PEPP, and people think, look, this is just crazy. I don't know what's going on here. I don't get it. It's confusing. So what do? They turn on Netflix. They turn on the soap operas. They look at whatever's going on the news, and it's all nonsense. It's all distractions. And meanwhile, these groups are taking over the world. That's all for this video. If you found it informative, hit that thumbs up button. When you do, you are supporting me, so I appreciate that very much. If you want to check me out on Instagram, on Twitter, I'm creating content every single day. You can do so at The Money GPS. If you want to learn how to sell stuff online, you can join us. 7,000 people plus are in my e-course, and best of all, it's free. It's a free e-course at theamazongps.com. If you want to understand the financial system from top to bottom, but understand that it's really complex, it's convoluted, and then we find out that, oh, wait a minute, it's being done like that on purpose. Well, these two books are going to break that down for you so simply. Check them out at the link in the description. If you want the audiobook, themoneygps.com. Wait a second, don't go anywhere. Have you seen this video? It's extremely important, and I definitely want you to watch it if you haven't already. Click on it. I will see you there.